to a very different episode of Woodward's Watercolours in the beautiful Cyprus, which has just been the most stunning place to be and to paint and to rest and to relax. Today we're going to be painting this beautiful little chapel called St.Elias in these beautiful blue skies. We're going to explore how you capture this kind of a detail of the brickwork, and I'm really excited for this one. So by the magic of TV and video, we're going to be back drawing this in the studio, and I probably will be wishing that I was back in Cyprus. But let's come and paint St.Elias Church in Cyprus together. Okay, so today we're going to draw St.Elias Chapel in Protaras in Cyprus. I think it's might be even in Paralimini. So we're using the Feud de Mannen. You can see it has this little bent nib and some carbon ink. So we're just going to get started here, and I want to keep it nice and loose and see where we're going to go with this. The lovely thing about the Feud de Mannen is just the different sizes of the nibs. And what you can do is also turn it around and just capture different parts of it. Really want to keep this nice and loose today, and can see some of the details in the little turrets here. St.Elias Chapel is translated into English is Elijah. So this is St. Elijah's Chapel. So we're just going to use this Feud de Mannen. The lovely thing about the Feud de Mannen is you have lots of different varieties of sizes of nibs, and you can really manipulate that quite effectively as you turn it around. So even for this, to capture this bell that little bit more, we can just continue to work on here. So we're just getting the general shape here. Just wanting to, so it has this kind of ridged roof that's coming up, and then coming over again on this side, and then across to here. So we're going to just use that nice thin line to bring it up to the apex, and then down again. So it's got this little jutting line across here, and then along down here. Okay, so at this point, as I said, we're just trying to get in the general structure of it. And there's lots of the detail that we really won't need to capture that much. I'm sort of avoiding a little bit using the thicker edge of it in some parts, because I want to be able to you know, capture some of the thinner lines of this before we move on then to getting more of the thicker lines that are going to really give us some depth as we move on here. So it's going to move those lines across here. I'm not counting or anything like that. I want to, as I said, keep it nice and free. And it was so beautiful standing there in that wonderful heat and just enjoying being present in Cyprus. Now after this, you'll see that we're back in Cyprus again, and it'll just be so lovely to be there again. Now let's see. Okay, so we're gonna take this across and down. Now it's in the arc isn't quite as nice as I'd like it to be. Just bringing that down across there, and then we're going to capture those tile lines. And there's a very small bit of the roof across here and then down. So hopefully what you can see is that, you know, you may sort of think, oh my goodness, he's made a mistake there. I'm not overly concerned about that. What I'm concerned about is trying to get the overall feel of the shape. And once I've got that, then I can continue to move on. So we're getting this nice line here, which should be over the apex. There's actually 4 there, so we'll keep them in there. And then we have another line sort of echoing that is just slightly further across. And these have a little white outline just around those little gaps there. Now I'm not sure, I did go inside now, but I'm not sure whether they are actually letting some light in, and they could well be doing that. It's a lovely pulling of the colour with the black, with that part of the Feud de Mannen, the nib. It just really adds to it. Just pulling the lines across here for the white part underneath the just underneath where the ridges of the roof tiles are. And then what we can do is we can accomplish that kind of feel of the ridge tiles with the watercolor. So we're just gonna, there's another line of tiles just across here. And then stops there. And another line of tiles that goes along here. And as you can see, it also stops there as well. Okay, so got this line here and this line down here. Now, I'm going to pull this down across here. And then the exact same thing across on this side here. Okay, and then we can use the thicker lines if we want to. We may need to draw some more ink out. Well, it might work okay. Just going to move those lines slightly whenever I feel that the lines aren't perspective, aren't as great as they could be. And then we've got this interesting part of the sort of, it's like a little, almost like a little step down, and then it goes further out because of where I'm standing on this side and down again. And we're just going to pull this, so we want to see where the actual door is going to be. So let's just pop the door right here. It needs to be a little bit thinner than that. Sometimes I use the dot to dot kind of style to get me to find out where actually, now you can see the line is just, and what I could do is maybe pull the line across this way. Let's use the ink that way to be able to get a little bit more ink back down into the nib. And across here is where it's just like a little bit of this, it's nearly like a little handrail as to where people can actually let themselves get into the chapel. For anybody who needs sort of something to lean on, we all do after doing the steps to get up to it. And we found that as we were, this was really close to our hotel, so the more that we stayed in the place, the more we were aware of, like, you know, the hacks that you get when you're on holiday and somebody will say to you, well, you know, if you go here, then you'll find that this is an easier way to get to a place. So that was one of the things that happened. So just concentrating there when I'm getting this down. That was one of the things that happened while we were there, was this people saying, okay, so I know you took those big steps that were tiring, but actually you can go this way, which was kind of cool. So whenever I went back to the chapel to take this photograph, then I went the shorter way, which was really lovely and much less tiresome. Now you can see that there's a little bit of, I've splodged a little bit of the ink there and marked it ever so slightly, but we're not going to be overly worried about that. We just keep going. And we're going to pull this down on the side and bring it around there. Okay. Now the other thing is, we want to get this main doorway in next, and we've got some of the tree here that can be added. I mean, you can add it in sort of like this and do different shapes and things to kind of indicate where you want it to be. You can also then pull in on the side some of the landscape if you want to do that, and you know, you can even capture a little bit of that wall that's running kind of alongside where it is. The other thing that's really helpful is whenever you're, so we're going to do this big strong line across here, which is lovely with the Feud de Mannen, and then break that line up ever so slightly by So the line, it's just trying to, perspective is all about noticing the lines that are actually present rather than the ones that you think are present. And then you've got this crazy paving pathway here. So what I tend to do with paths is just give an example of just a couple of places where the likes of that paving is, and then making it smaller as you go into the distance. Just in a few places, and then the rest of it you can accomplish with the watercolor. Okay, now the last thing that I want to do before I'm going to begin to add watercolor to it then is, now this is probably still a little bit wet, that might be a little bit wet too, but we want to, so the apex of the roof we want to bring to about here. So we're going to pull this down on this side. And also down on this side. Now, the great thing that we can do then is, because it is so dark, here is we can use the thicker part of the nib. So it's smudging ever so slightly down on that end. We'll not worry about that too much. And the thicker part here, and that also gives you the opportunity whenever you're going over it again to correct any of the lines. So the more that I, don't be terribly concerned as to whether I've got everything absolutely right, then the more freedom that I will feel as I draw, which is really helpful when you're doing these videos, because obviously you could feel pressure that it's got to be absolutely perfect if you hadn't already dealt with that in the first place. So delighted to not be feeling that pressure. So just with some of these stones here on this building, which is just one of the, I think one of the loveliest things about the building, is the revealing of this, or the, not revealing, how that's so obviously part of it is the stonework on the outside, and just hinting in just a few places where that actually is, and looking for some of the shapes of the blocks and things. And we can do that also here. So where there's been that smudge, then we can make almost more of a distracting feature about that. And also I might do that just in a couple of other places, which is then is going to indicate that that's actually the case. You know, that's what's going on there. We don't want to do it all everywhere, just in a few specific places. Now there's also a light that's on top of that doorway, which I'm going to quite deliberately leave out because I think it's just unnecessary to the scene. And you get to make all of these kind of choices whenever you're drawing. Obviously you get to edit things in and out, and I sound like I'm doing the hokey cokey. You get to edit them in and out and do it the way that you see it yourself or you remember it. So I'll maybe just do, actually won't, I'm not going to do any more of those sort of brick shapes on that point. Okay, one of the things obviously that's important for me is, then at this point I would tend to put a signature in somewhere, keep it small, keep it hidden, and then I'll put in the name of the church as well. Now we put that on the bottom right, and I've got used to stamping this over the last week while I was in Cyprus. And we booked this holiday really very last minute, so it was really exciting and just lovely to be going away. So well, it really was really warm. I think it was 37 degrees and pretty humid, which being from Northern Ireland is not something that I am that used to, or my family is that used to, but it was just great going off the sun lounger into the pool, back on the sun lounger, and that's all you did all day long. In beautiful blue skies, which are so uncommon and intermittent in Northern Ireland unless we get a heat wave, which doesn't happen that often. Okay, so that's the main bulk. Now the other thing that I want to do is I want to notice places that are that bit darker. So there's shadow right along here. You've got the shadow in these windows. We've done the little bell on the tower there. There is a little just touch of shadow across here, which we're just underneath those tiles. and across on this little part here. This is actually quite a bit bigger than I would normally tend to draw, so quite a lot of freedom in that too. Just pull it along down that line, this line here also. Doesn't the Feud de Mannen just give such a lovely amount of ink, and it just really gives you the opportunity to go to town on different lines. You can see how the Feud de Mannen would be a good part of a plein air kit, because obviously you're not going to have the same amount that you would in the room or study that you paint in, but it just gives you, you know, more to play with in terms of qualities of lines, you know. Okay, so now that we've done that, we're going to see which ones we open up. Oh, we've got the Daniel Smiths. So we're going to use Daniel Smith for this one. I'm going to put them off to the side, and we're looking at, move this slightly bit over so we can then have the colours mixed on this side. So we're going to do 3 lifts with the pointed wash. This is a Dale O'Reilly Aquafine pointed wash, a size 6. And we're going to take the cerulean blue for these wonderful blue skies, which are just so full of just this beautiful bright blue color. And the skies are so different in different parts of the world. And I know that I've probably said this many times, but I know that for Van Gogh, when he moved to the south of France, he found that the colors were just that so much more vibrant, and it really, really changed the way he painted and the colors that he used. So I'm going to keep my water across there, so I'm not pulling it across the page. Maybe mix in a little bit of a stronger. And these beautiful blue skies are so dominant in this picture. See where a little bit of that carbon ink hasn't dried. So what we'll do is we'll just keep that moving. I'll not worry about that too much. And I'm going to get that little bit of blue poking through on the turret here. Just moving it across the picture. And that might pull in different places. Isn't that quite stunning, the way it just changes it all of a sudden? Now you can see those the carbon ink, I should have let it dry more because it is leaking a little bit, but again, we're not going to be too concerned about that. Just going to move this across to this side, and then we also want to get some of the flicks in there. Okay, now what I want to do then is move to a different brush. We're going to use the, let me see, this is one of my favorite brushes that I have. It's the 3/4 flat wash, the Simply Dale O'Reilly range. I'm just throwing water across that page. We'll not worry about that. Just suck that up ever so gently there. I'm going to clean the palette off as well, because I don't tend to return to skies once they're done. So what we're going to do then is get some of these tones for these bricks underneath. And this is a really, really good way to show how layering works so well with watercolor. So we've gone for the more kind of orangey bricks, and I've mixed in geothite, which is the brown ochre, with a little bit of yellow ochre, and then a little bit of raw umber. Now what we'll do is we'll mix also from that point as well. So we're just going to add in some of those shapes of bricks, just quite randomly in different places, just using the corner of that flat edge and mix across. The other thing that we can do then is start to change that, so we can add in just deeper colors. And notice just looking in different places where we see these different colours and different sizes. Also using the structure of some of the bricks that we've noticed. Now, not everyone is this kind of sort of darker style of brick or size of brick. It varies as we go throughout. So we should be attentive of that, and be using different colours as we go, and also varying the, I was going to say viscosity, I don't know whether that's the right word or not, but you know, using different sort of diluted, you know, versions of the watercolor that we're actually going to use here. And once these layers dry, then you begin to see this really build up. Now, we don't want to do it dot, 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 like you would if you were a child, you know, to like do a leopard, because it's much more random than that. It's not structured, you know. This is like crazy paving on a wall, if any of you are familiar with that. So it's just moving this around in different places, noticing it, and some are a little bit richer. I'm gonna try and capture that. Now, the other thing that we're doing is, this is because this is the first layer, then as we do other layers on top of that, then it's going to settle down those brighter tones, because some of these rocks are really, really obvious. Others are much more subtle and kind of blend in. So it's just really noticing that, keeping going with that. Right. What I'll do as well is then we're going to mix in much darker tones, and we can begin to do, you know, sort of larger areas across here, and this bit here is much darker, so let's note that. I don't want to start doing any of the tile work because it's too close at the minute to areas that are wet. So we'll just let those dry before we start doing any of that. And then this one is a really, really light mix of some of the similar colours. So it's just giving that general feel of, and then in other layers, we're going to be adding more of these kind of small bricks, you know. So we just keep working our way through this. Then some big bricks. Do some really noticeably longer bricks across here. Hopefully it's giving you this idea of a kind of a higgledy-piggledy crazy paving brickwork that you can see. And the other thing that we can then do is, while that's drying, is begin to look at the stonework underneath here. So there's just a couple of other darker places. And this area here seems to be getting quite dark. So I've just begun to add some of these darker areas. Because it's so light on the outside, then it becomes so dark on the inside. So we're just going to notice that, and then also around these little structures in here, there's a lot of shadow as well, so we're just going to note that too. Make those marks along there. Okay, so for this crazy paving area on the front, we're going to again notice that. Not capture it in every area where there's the brick. We're just giving a nod. You know, I talk about giving a nod to these things. We're just going to give a nod to that and keep this moving. And we don't want to get bored of the painting. Now, if you are getting bored of doing a painting, then what I suggest you do is take a break. Don't force yourself to be doing something for hours, because then it'll become an utter chore that you don't want to paint. So it's just noticing that. Some of those bricks. And then also what we're going to do is add in some of this like the soil that is so obvious on this side. Be careful how I do this because I don't want the colours to start mixing on me. But just noticing a couple of those areas. And then just a little bit across here. Okay, now we need this to dry, so we're going to let this dry and then we can move on to the next layer. But what I'm going to do before that, can you tell I just noticed something, is I'm going to take just a little bit of the Payne's Grey and just going to give a little bit of a suggestion of that this path has actually got some sort of a detail here. Now that is quite blue, so I've just added in a little bit of this colour that was on the other part of the palette. Just moving this across here. You can see how those areas of mistakes start to get really swallowed up in the actual picture. So the things that we often are most worried about in our drawings, if you just keep taking the process to its conclusion, then actually you don't notice those things after a while once you keep going with the actual painting. Okay, just gonna, well, I've got that different colour. Look at those areas there. Okay, so we're going to let this dry and then we'll come back and we're going to add in another layer to it. Okay, so we've got this layer dry and I'm going to mix a really quite a thin, but we're using yellow ochre and we're going to give a nice thin wash in different areas. Lift it ever so slightly with a little bit of a Hansa yellow just to make it that bit lighter. And what we're going to do is just begin to move this across in these different areas just to give that sort of illusion. Now, we're not doing full coverage here. We're simply beginning to give some cover across the brickwork. So just in different sections, you can see how the watercolour is practically waterproof once it's been dry, and we can begin to build up this kind of layer of stone. And what I loved about this building is how unique. I don't know that I have ever actually seen a building with that dominance of this kind of orangey colour of stone. And just such a lovely building to just show off how you use layers to bring about this overall kind of a feeling. Now I'm just going to try and mix these colours ever so slightly again. The thing that you can do then is just, you could add in some those more, I was going to say dots, but they're the areas of the brickwork. So you can see how that first layer begins to make some more sense. And often what I find is that you have to embrace that paintings go through ugly phases and you've got to work with them while they're, you've got to work through those ugly phases. And I mean, this wasn't too bad, but I've had some paintings that look absolutely horrendous. And then you add in by the second or third layer, it feels like you've actually arrived somewhere. So it's, I think, so important that we don't just rip up paintings and get rid of them just because they're not finished pieces within the first 10 or 15 minutes. It takes time, and particularly with watercolour as well, I think is one of the best mediums to really teach us patience. If you want to work with watercolour, you're going to have to work with it and how it works. Now the thing I'm going to do is just add in next layer across there. Now we're going to go to a smaller brush. Going to use this is a Filbert and it's a number 6. nice round edge to it. And I'm going to take some of the Payne's Grey or Jane's Grey. Going to add it to the Indian ink. Get this brush nice and wet. And we're going to go over those already dark areas, but add in another layer, which is going to, and then let the paint also pull in different sections as well, which should really darken this down and give this idea of you're walking in. Always think that if there's a bend in the road, you should want to walk down it, or if there's a pathway, you should want to walk into it. If there's a doorway, you should want to walk through it. So that's my idea of success when it comes to finishing a painting. Now, the other thing that I want to do is begin this process of, now I'm going to mix these two together and begin this process of the tiles. I don't know how successful that's been there, but that can certainly be a base layer. Notice that whenever the tiles, the closer that they get to you, the more the lines, so the lines of perspective move towards you as you come closer to the center. It's just something to be aware of whenever you're painting. Drop in that little bit of color there. Also want to give a nod to, there's that phrase again, give a nod to the little almost looks like little fake windows on that side. And also these are not all, these colors here across this part now, it's actually getting quite dry towards that area, and all the way up here it's not white, it's slightly actually off white, and we just want to notice that. Now we can do, because this is dry, is then also begin to add in another layer here to this path. I'm just using this Filbert brush while I've got it loaded with the colour that I want. I love using colours and not wasting them. So again, just building up this pathway here. So across that side. Now on that side there as well. I don't want to do that quite yet. Now let's let this layer dry and then we can proceed. Okay, third layer now drying. Now the good thing also, I'm not changing the water deliberately, because the water is actually being really helpful to this process, because all of these colors are really very similar. Then it means that as I'm adding in other layers here, hopefully you can see that really by layer 3 you're starting to get much closer to what it is that you're wanting out of the painting, and just adding in some of that sort of darker area that's occurring where this sort of bit that's really sitting out and is effectively like a step is creating a little bit of shadow. Now what I want to do as well is get a little bit more water, go for some of these deeper shadows, because these shadows are also moving across this top bit here. Just want to touch this with the, and there's actually quite a deep shadow across this section here. Okay, so you can begin to see this kind of start to emerge, these, just using that bit edge of the brush there to create a little bit more of the effect of the shadows along. And it's just this layering up that's really just, it just takes a bit of patience. Patience really does reward you as you keep going with it. And then, these shadows here are getting darker where the sun isn't hitting, and then on this side again, darker again. And I always find this bit really very exciting because, as I said, it starts to really come to the painting that you've been looking for. And in my experience, that's what begins to happen. Hopefully yours is something similar. Just really loading up the brush at this stage. And then there's just this little bit of just mist here of the brickwork, just along this little section here, which I don't want to miss. I really want to capture that. Now, a little bit more work to do on some of this brickwork here. And because we're now on the third layer, you're going to be able to add in more details to give that kind of illusion of the crazy paving style. I don't know whether you've heard of crazy paving. That's what I remember we had crazy paving out in the back garden at home in Newtonards, and Dad, so he's breaking up different slabs of just paving slabs really, and just adding those, you know, into this what they call crazy paving, and then you fill in the gaps with the concrete, and it gives you this really, I want to break those lines up because we don't want them all being the same. I just notice as I go along here, some shadows underneath where these lines are. I'm going to do the same here, and I know that that's going to run ever so slightly, but it should bring about this kind of idea of the modeling. Now, again, I can add in, we've lost a little bit of the detail here, so what I can do then is on top of the washes that we've done here, let's just add in. Now it's much more in the shadow, so you're not going to notice as much, but just with a few of those lines, then you're going to, again, sort of, now we don't want it to look too sort of leopard-like, but again, they're very dark lines there, but that's okay. We'll just dilute that a little bit, and up here again, it's a much grayer because it's sort of going around the side, and it's also, we can just bring that shadow across there, just add in just a little bit more detail. I'm gonna show that that's dark there, the contrast here. So really at this stage, one of the things, at this stage, it nearly becomes less crucial where you're putting the brush marks in. It becomes much more important that you just keep going with this building process. I always find this part really quite nice, and just really enjoyable. So you just, you know, and effectively nearly it feels like embellishing. And I want to bring, one of the things that I want to notice here is there's a really dark line across this part, which is going to be really powerful when I get it in, because it's just going to add in that bit of depth. So we're just adding this along here. Appreciate this is a longer video today, but I thought it'd be really good to show the process effectively from start to finish. Okay, so what I want to do as well is I can rescue some of these colors by adding in just that little bit of the cerulean, and I'm gonna just to make that path a little bit more believable in some ways. And also across this point here, we've got these shadows. These strong shadows that are, what I'm going to do is draw it right across and then stop it at that end and let it pull at that end, because it is such a sunny place, it is so strong in terms of the shadow that's going to come out of these areas. And I mean, I don't really get in Northern Ireland, you know, massive shadows all the time, sometimes, but not that often. So I'm going to as well take a little bit more of the Payne's Grey. Can probably add it in nearly neat at this stage. I'm just going to add in a little bit of brown to earth it down that bit more. You see that a couple of those little bits there have, whatever way the brush is, just creates that sense of wanting to bring you in. So what I'm going to do, because they have both escape where I don't want them to, is do the dab and grab. So I've squeezed out the brush, and then we'll just, there we go, it disappears quite nicely. The last thing that I want to do, last but by no means least, there is actually a bit of a tree happening on this side, but what I want to do is just simply put the tree on this side, and this is with the undersea green. It looks like an olive tree, and that was one of the things that I just so enjoyed about Cyprus. So what I do whenever I'm doing trees is, particularly when they're like this, is I am just letting the brush dance. I'm looking up and down at the image to make sure that I'm basically getting it, hopefully, in the position where it is. And now I don't want to take it right down to where the water is across here, because I don't want the two of them to bleed together. So I'm just going to take close-ish. So then actually could get some of the neat colour and drop some of that neat colour in. And then that's going to hopefully give me some quite interesting shapes. Just keeping it moving. And just using the corner of the flat edge brush to get that. And then also what I want to do is just getting a little flick of that green on that side. Okay, now the one last thing, he keeps saying the one last thing, famous last words, is I just want to mark the fact that there is actually shadow in there. And also shadow here. And Payne's Grey is wonderful for capturing shadow. Shadow across here. Just adds that little bit of modelling to the whole thing, and will just give me that greater sense of depth. And there we have it. I'm going to leave that there for today. Really quite pleased with that. Pleased with the effect that I've achieved with this layering up. So really we've looked at 3 to 4 layers. There's loads of detail that we've missed out, but hopefully we have captured the feel of this scene. So thanks so much for staying with me as I've gone through this process, and I really hope that it's been beneficial for you to watch it. Well, I really hope you enjoyed that video, and just capturing something that's that little bit different to what we're normally used to. When Van Gogh went to the south of France, he really appreciated how the colours were so much more vibrant and so much more different. And maybe one day you'll get the opportunity to come and paint here in Cyprus. You're maybe from a much hotter country than I am, being in good old Belfast where it's damp and rains and it's cold most of the time. But I've so enjoyed how much quicker I can accomplish layers when I'm painting plein air in this place. So I hope that you've really enjoyed this video. As always, like and subscribe and share. And thanks so much for taking your time to watch this. Do send me your versions of this to woodwardswatercolours@gmail.co.uk, and I'll put them up in my community section. But for now, from the glorious, beautiful and incredibly warm Cyprus. I'll see you sometime soon. Bye for now.